On a regular basis, there are stories in the paper and magazines about some new archaeological discovery in the Holy Land, some new piece of evidence that maybe there was a Jesus or maybe there wasn't one, or we have this evidence about the crucifixion, or maybe we discovered a different tomb, or it's pretty regular. And every time it comes out, then people argue about that piece of evidence, saying, yes, this is really supportive, or no, this is not. And it probably depends upon what you were thinking ahead of time, whether you really think this is helpful or it's not helpful. All kind of asking the question that gets asked, especially this time of year, is it true? Is it true that Jesus rose from the dead? Is it true? Is it true what those disciples encountered afterwards? Is that true? And certainly that's a question that a lot of people continue to ask, because there was the story in the paper the other day that only half of the people in the United States now are associated with any Christian church. The number continues to decline, and so as they look at that question, is it true? Apparently, a lot of them are saying, I don't think so. Is it true? So we hear this story this morning of these disciples, Mary of Magdala initially, going to prepare Jesus' body for the funeral because they had not had a chance to do a funeral since it was the Passover feast, so nobody could do any work. So Mary is taking the things she needed to start preparing his body so that they could have a decent funeral. And she discovers the stone rolled away. And as you heard, she doesn't go inside or anything. It's like, what happened? And so she runs off to tell the disciples. Later, she will be the first one to encounter Jesus, the first one to hear his voice after he rises from the dead. But she is not the first one to believe. That happens here in the gospel story you just heard. Peter and the other disciple run to the tomb. The other disciple looks in, sees the burial cloths there, but just stands there and waits for Peter to catch up, because Peter is older and slower in his running. And so when he finally gets there and goes in, then this other disciple goes in and, as you heard, believes. He believes. Though it is a bit comforting for me, that last line in today's gospel, they didn't really understand, but they believed. And I think, oh, good, because they were right there, and they didn't understand. When Jesus turned water into wine, they still didn't understand. When Jesus multiplied the loaves and the fishes for the 5,000, they didn't understand. When Jesus raised people from the dead or healed those who were blind or ill, they didn't understand. He still didn't understand. He didn't understand, but he believed. So it's okay for me sometimes when I'm reading some theology, I think, I don't get it. I'm sorry, I just don't get it. Or something that the church proclaims, and I think, oh, okay, I don't understand yet, but I'll trust that this is correct. And maybe someday my little weak mental ability might be able to understand what this is all about, but right now it doesn't, and that's okay. It's interesting that the belief comes for the other disciple by his going into the tomb. And maybe that's important for all of us, to be willing to go into the tomb, to go with Jesus there. And perhaps it is there in the tomb that we might come to believe. For that just simply means to go with Jesus on his journey to the things that he has called you and me to do. To be those kind of people who are willing to embrace what he teaches and to live it, to enter into that experience totally, even though we don't understand. Because certainly a lot of things that Jesus teaches us, and you think, oh, that loving your enemies, Jesus, is really hard. And you expect me to do that? Yes. You expect me to pray for my persecutors? Yes. You expect me just to continue to be generous and giving and forgiving and loving? Yes. Okay. I don't want to sometimes, but you are asking me to do this. You're asking me to go into that tomb, into that life. And in living it, it begins to make sense. John doesn't name that other disciple. So sometimes people say, are we sure we don't know his name? All the way through, he's just called the beloved disciple, the other disciple. The other disciple does this, the other disciple did that. The beloved does, the one who Jesus loved, the other disciple. So, what's that disciple's name? It's Bill, or Margaret, or Karen, or John. It's your name. It's Damien. John writes that gospel so that you put yourself in the beloved disciple's place. You are the one at the cross. You are the one on the night that he's betrayed who lays your head on his chest. You are the one running side by side with Peter and getting to the tomb first. You are the one who bends down and looks in, sees those burial cloths there, and waits. You are the one who enters the tomb and without totally understanding everything, believes. You're the one whose heart says, it's true.